Part 54. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 533. But this is easier said than done? Although the Xixia army has retreated a little, there are still many cities left guarding the captured cities. In addition to the rebels blooming everywhere, it can be said that the entire Great Zhou dynasty is in flames of war. General Yuan was concerned about the country and the people and lamented the decline of the country's fortunes, but the emperor was very happy. He didn't expect Qi Ziyuan's strategy to really work. In this way, their manpower would be free. Almost immediately, the emperor ordered General Yuan to dispatch another half of the manpower to Qi Ziyuan, and let Qi Ziyuan personally lead the troops to rehabilitate him. General Yuan raised his eyebrows, thinking that this was too risky, and there were too few people left at the border. Qi Ziyuan also frowned. His foundations are all in Xingzhou Mansion, Hanshong Mansion, and Jingzhou Mansion. If he leads his troops away, the three mansions will be guarded by General Yuan's men. Doesn't he put his rear in General Yuan's eyelids? Underneath. Therefore, when General Yuan wrote a letter to argue for reason, Qi Ziyuan also followed suit. At this time, Emperor Jinjian didn't want to quarrel with the two of them, so he was very tolerant to them. The number of people transferred from the general is reduced by half, and Qi Ziyuan can also keep half of the people to guard the Jingzhou Mansion, and bring all the rest back to suppress the rebellion. Both General Yuan and Qi Ziyuan agreed, and began to order troops and generals. At this time, Qi Heiran had already taken over a dozen counties in the south, and the progress was not too slow. The emperor was very satisfied with Qi Heiran, because he was not perfunctory like other generals, and worked hard to recover the cities. The emperor was about to praise him and promote him, which could be regarded as appeasing Qi Ziyuan, but who knew that when he turned his head, he confronted the remaining Xixia army. Qi Heiran led his army to directly attack the city occupied by Xixia, biting the Xixia army like crazy, and took back 3 county towns in just 2 days. When the emperor received the news, Qi Heiran was sending troops to besiege another county town. Emperor Jinjian fell back in anger. Xixia had to retreat part of its troops due to the domestic war, and the remaining troops only defended the defeated city and did not attack again. The final strategy he discussed with the ministers was to put down the rebellion first, and then try to take back the city occupied by Xixia. If not, then negotiate peace. Now that the Xixia army is no longer attacking, what is Qi Heiran doing to provoke them? Isn't this a disaster for Dezhou? Emperor Jinjian was so angry that his teeth were itching. He asked the summoner, "Why did Qi Heiran resist the order?" "I asked him to suppress the bandits, not to fight the Xixia army." "Does he not even know the difference between the bandits and the barbarians?" The messengers were only in charge of sending messages, and they were almost on the road, so he really didn't know why General Qi refused to obey the order, so he could only pretend to be a quail with his head down. However, the left servant of the household department stumbled in and cried on the ground, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, the Xixia army slaughtered Jiawan County, and no one in the county and the villages below was spared. 100,000 people just disappeared, even the old man, weak women and children are not spared, Your Majesty." Emperor Jingyan's complexion turned pale, and he sat down on the dragon chair, and asked with a dry voice, "Has this matter dissipated?" "Not yet, but I can't hide it. Jiawan County is the outermost county town occupied by Xixia. Your Majesty, in this way, it can be explained why General Tong Qi fought with the Xixia army at this time. General Qi did nothing wrong in this matter. Your Majesty, if we don't respond to this matter, I'm afraid that the common people will be disappointed, and there will be no benefit in countering the rebellion. Please forgive General Qi." The emperor asked dryly, "Then what if 11 Xia attacks again?" After the highness was quiet, Yan Du stood up and asked, "Your Majesty, will the common people forgive the imperial court if we give in to Xixia and stop massacring the city?" Emperor Jinjian remained silent. This is obviously impossible. If they do not fight back, the Xixia army will only intensify. The Han people under their rule may be massacred at will, and the people of Dazhu will only be more disappointed with the court when they see this. There will only be more people joining the rebels. This is simply an endless loop. But when they sent troops, they would bring in Xixia, who had already stopped fighting, and Dezhou was still under attack. Emperor Jinjian smiled bitterly, as if no matter how he went, it would be a dead end. These damn Xixia barbarians, the situation is obviously improving, why should they massacre the city? Qin Xiang has been around Xixia all the time, why hasn't he heard the sound so far? Could it be that Qin Xiang didn't notice something as big as the massacre? When Qin Xiang was mentioned, everyone became angry at the same time. It is true that Qin Xiang is too good at hiding. Since he went to Xixia to negotiate, there was some news of progress at the beginning, but after more than half a year, people are still staying in Xixia, and the news is also gone. According to the rumor, but it is all nonsense at all, and more people in the court are dissatisfied with him. The emperor also frowned slightly, and was also dissatisfied with Prime Minister Qin. He originally thought that Prime Minister Qin would be able to negotiate a peace with Xixia, but he didn't expect that there was no progress on his side. In the end, it was Qi Ziyuan's trick to make Xixia take a step back. The emperor lowered his eyes, and decisively ordered Qin Xiang. After massacring Prime Minister Qin, he undoubtedly shifted the responsibility to him. The courtiers with flexible minds were slightly chilled, but those who did not consider this level were pure indignation. Yan Du retreated with the ministers. He stood on the steps and looked at the ministers who came and went in a hurry, then turned his head to look at their office, and sighed. When I went back, I told Yan Fu, I want to resign as a father. Yan Fu was silent for a moment, then said, I'm afraid the emperor won't allow it. Yan Du nodded, so I plan to get sick for my father. Your grandfather was his teacher, and he pushed him to that position with one hand, and ended up like that. You should have heard about what happened in the Chongzheng Palace today. Prime Minister Qin assisted him. In the past 20 years, I didn't think much about it when I launched it. So father is chilling the emperor? Yan Fu didn't persuade him, it's not certain whether Dezhou can keep it, anyway, he has long since despaired of this country and this king. As soon as the story of Xixia massacre spread, the fierce reaction of the people was beyond the expectation of Emperor Jinjian and his courtiers. With this incident, the rebels from all over the country proclaimed themselves kings one after another, and directly spread their names to other places. Most of the poor people who suffered from the war directly took their families and found a government nearby and joined the army. Anyway, they would die if they were from the Great Zhou, and they might live 2 more days if they didn't. The rebellion reached a new high. The rest of the people thought of this character after Emperor Jinjian issued an imperial decree to Prime Minister Qin, so a vigorous Qing dynasty side movement appeared, and the common people who shouted to execute Qin Xiang, a traitor, were almost blocked by the avenue leading to the palace. Up. Linen City, which has always been quiet and stable, has also become a little chaotic. At this time, it shows the benefits of having the imperial guards outside the mansion. At least when listening to the noisy voices outside, Mu Yangling is not afraid at all of being bumped into by unsightly people. Qi Mansion. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 534. Although Mu Yangling didn't go out, he still knew from his subordinates how violent the commotion outside was. Not to mention that the people in Linen City were in groups at the gate of the yamen or on the side of the road to ask for the eradication of treacherous ministers, and even the people in several nearby cities and counties were all in groups. Come to petition. It is said that people in other places also expressed to the local yamen the meaning of the Qing emperor's side, and some even went to temples to burn incense and worship Buddha. Things got worse and worse. Both Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua had a wrong intuition, as if there was a hand pushing behind it. In the beginning, I only talked about the side of the Qing Emperor, saying that Prime Minister Qin did not do anything in Xixia, and later he found out the old account of Prime Minister Qin. Now, he has ordered the massacre of the city in Xixia. Li Jinghua frowned worriedly. The momentum in Linan City is not good. Small, I don't know if I will be provoked and confused. In the past, Linan City was always safe no matter how much noise was going on outside, but now it's getting a little noisy just because of a Qin Prime Minister. Mu Yangling was also a little worried. Hearing this, he said, I have asked people to make preparations, and my sister-in-law has also put away important things, just in case. Li Jinghua nodded to express her understanding, then lowered her voice and said, I'm afraid Prime Minister Qin won't survive. Anyway, he's coming back soon, and we'll know when the time comes. Although Mu Yangling said so, he was sure that Prime Minister Qin probably would not survive. With the emperor's character, he was already afraid of Prime Minister Qin. How could he not take this opportunity to get rid of him? As the person Qi Heiran hates the most, Mu Yangling's understanding of Prime Minister Qin is not low. When Qi Heiran was still half a child, he knew that Prime Minister Qin was a traitor and General Yuan was a hero. This shows how bad Prime Minister Qin's reputation is, not to mention that his popularity is comparable to that of General Yuan. But Mu Yangling has always felt that it is very powerful for a bad person to be so successful, so when Qi Heiran occasionally scolded Prime Minister Qin, he asked two questions: since Prime Minister Qin is so bad, why does the emperor still like him so much? The Prime Minister only needs to please Jingguo and Xixia to be a good one. If someone else heard this, they would probably think that Mu Yangling was being sarcastic, but Qi Heiran knew that Mu Yangling was really asking a question. Qi Heiran has always been strong in front of Mu Yangling, so he kept the question in his heart and ran back to ask his elder brother. The reason why he didn't ask Fan Zijin was because he was sure he didn't know, and he just scolded the treacherous officials like him. Qi Ziyuan was also a little surprised by his younger brother's question, but he still gave him the answer after thinking for a long time. Of course, it is impossible for the emperor not to know that Prime Minister Qin is not a good person, but Prime Minister Qin does not need to be a good person, as long as he is useful and loyal to the emperor. At that time, Qi Ziyuan had no intention of rebelling, so analyzing the emperor in front of his younger brother challenged his inner loyalty to the emperor, but the emperor was naturally more important than his younger brother. It's time for my younger brother to get in touch with these political affairs. The officialdom is dangerous, but he is still like a child in his teens, so Qi Ziyuan didn't wait for him to understand it on his own, and began to teach him in detail, and he also brought Fan Zijin here. Qi Ziyuan and Rong Xian analyzed Qin Xiang's life for them, focusing on Qin Xiang, who was captured and fled back then, and urged the emperor to negotiate peace. It can be said that Qin Xiang's purpose is so clear to the point of brutality. It may be for survival at the beginning, and it is for power later. But this man is very talented. It is undeniable that it is a great skill to coax the emperor, who is moody and seldom in one point of his mind. Besides, Prime Minister Qin's ability in government affairs is not weak. He is the Prime Minister and the Minister of the Ministry of Household Affairs. When he was the most favored, he even served as the Minister of the Ministry of Punishment. With so many government affairs piled up on him, he can handle them in an orderly manner. This shows his talent. In Qi Ziyuan's words, Qin Xiang's talent is no less than that of his benefactor Yan Teifu, but his mind is useless. Although Yan Teifu is not a good person, but the bottom line is there, Qin Xiang is doing it for promotion and promotion. A person whose power has no bottom line. So the first officialdom and life lessons that Qi Ziyuan taught the cousins were to have a bottom line. Qi Heiran is not worried anymore. Qi Ziyuan knows his younger brother well. He looks fierce on his face, but he is kind-hearted and has enough means. Although he is a bit stupid, he has no great promise and no great risk. Fan Zijin was different. This kid was very smart, but he didn't have the right family. He was probably stimulated when he was a child, so he grew crooked. When he came to seeing Zhou Mansion, he found out that his temper had been fixed, and it was difficult to change it. Qi Ziyuan could only influence him slowly. Let's talk about influence for now. Closer to home, after being taught by Qi Ziyuan, Qi Heiran ran to show off to Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling naturally knew many things about Prime Minister Qin. I also believe in him. Therefore, based on the character and image of Prime Minister Qin in Qi Ziyuan's words, he must not sit still. How could such a person who takes his own life and power as the highest goal be willing to come back to die? These little people all knew that the emperor might abandon him, so how could Qin Xiang know the emperor's mind so well that he didn't know? So Mu Yangling didn't understand why Prime Minister Qin came back. Ordinarily, shouldn't he escape early and feel at ease? After returning to Linen City, it will be much more difficult to escape further. It's probably for the sake of the family, Li Jinghua said with a smile. Mr. Qin's family is still in Linen City. Mu Yangling frowned in thought, then shook his head after a while and said, if it's someone I still believe, Prime Minister Qin, he shouldn't be the one who sacrificed his life for his family. The danger of coming back is too great. There is heartache for losing family members, but Prime Minister Qin will probably be resentful and avenge them, but it is unlikely that he will sacrifice his life for them. Thinking about it this way, Mu Yangling couldn't help but tense up. Qin Xiang is not an ordinary person. Although he has a very bad reputation, according to Qi Ziyuan's words, this person's IQ and EQ are far higher than that of Taifu Yan, and he is so ruthless. He is a person who can negotiate peace with two countries by himself, and Mu Yangling doesn't think his disturbance will be small. Thinking of Qi Ziyuan's secret letter received 2 days ago, Mu Yangling began to prepare in private. Qin Xiang was escorted to Beijing 2 days later. Although there were constant pleas from various places, he was still the prime minister. The emperor did not ask him for his crimes, so he deserved nothing less. After Qin Xiang arrived in the capital, he went directly to the palace, but he didn't come out again after entering the palace. For 2 days in a row, no matter how much commotion was going on outside or how the officials pried, the emperor didn't let Qin Xiang show up. Until the 5th day, there was no response from the palace. Seeing that the people in Zhongcheng were reacting more and more fiercely, Mu Yangling couldn't help admiring Prime Minister Qin's ability to turn the situation around at this time. She just felt relieved. Come, Fan Zijin knocked on the corner door of Qi's house overnight. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 535. The Angle Gate is the most conspicuous birth gate reserved by Mu Yangling, and the woman guarding it was hers long before Li Jinghua took power. It was one of the worst positions. At that time, Qi Heiran was still in the mansion, and Wu and the others didn't want to make the relationship too tense, so they let it go. So Fan Zijin was let in as soon as he knocked on the door, but there were many door guards and gatekeepers along the way, so it was obviously impossible for Fan Zijin to enter the inner courtyard quietly. Mu Yangling had already made plans to deal with various emergencies, so the mother-in-law didn't panic at all. After letting the person in, she quickly lit a lantern and hung it on a tree not far away. In just half a cup of tea, Miss Lishun came out to pick him up in person. The mother-in-law breathed a sigh of relief, and led the sullen Fan Zijin out, followed by Yan Mo. Lishun arrived at Zayahua courtyard smoothly all the way, and Mu Yangling was already sitting in the small study and waiting. After Lishun served a cup of tea for the two of them, he retreated respectfully, and stood in front of the door with Yanmo on one left and one on the right, staring at each other. In the room, Fan Zijin, who was sure he was safe, said, I'm afraid Linen City will be in chaos, so pack it up and leave Beijing overnight. Mu Yangling asked in surprise, How do you say that? The spies report that a mysterious army is about to arrive in Linen City. Fan Zijan's face became more and more ugly when he said this. We lost a lot of people, but we still haven't figured out who they are. I asked someone to inform the local garrison, but the person who pretended to be an informer went in but didn't come out again. Do you suspect that there are rebels in the officialdom? I'm not sure if it's the aristocratic family, the ministers, the generals leading troops outside, or the prince, Fan Zijan said in a low voice, but they are coming to Linen City, which is no longer safe. It's for your safety, you should leave now. Mu Yangling frowned. How can the court explain it? Brother, Fan Zijan also lowered his voice and said, don't worry, I will notify the other families after you leave. You are not the only ones who have disappeared. Even if the emperor becomes suspicious, we have reasons to cover it up. Besides, it will be soon. If the court is notified. Fan Zijan frowned and interrupted her with a wave of his hand, then let our people be wiped out by the court? Don't look at the situation of the great Zhou dynasty. The emperor is confused, and the secret guards and spies under the royal family are many times more powerful than us. Just show a little if there are clues. I am afraid that those of us who stay in the capital will be uprooted. Even if we may all be found out, I will not take this risk. A strange smile appeared on Fan Zijan's face. Besides, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my eldest brother. How can counterinsurgency be as good as counterinsurgency? Mu Yangling instantly understood that Fan Zijan's move was not only for self-protection, but also for the hope that this mysterious army would destroy the great Zhou emperor. When the emperor was gone, it would be more logical for Qi Ziyuan to jump out and fight for the world. Mu Yangling got up immediately, and said in a low voice, then I'll go and pack my things now. After a pause, he said, be careful too, find a reason to escape out of the city. Fan Zijan didn't think so, but agreed anyway. He is a man with a family and a business. How could he leave his family behind and leave alone? Mu Yangling was about to go out, but suddenly stopped and said, Aunt and cousin, do you want to go with us? Fan Zijan said irritably, it's already very conspicuous for the four of you to leave, and wouldn't it be obvious to bring them back to show that big cousin is going to make trouble? Don't be verbose, go quickly, I have my own arrangements for my family. Mu Yangling thought so too, turned around and asked Li Chun to quietly take the burden they had prepared before, and she went to find Li Jinghua in person. Fan Zijan, who was left behind, turned the teacup in his hand and said nothing. He can ignore his father and a few concubine brothers, but his mother and wife can no longer stay in the city, but it is difficult to find a reason for them to leave. Do Fan Zijan want it? Let the parents have a big fight, and then let the mother take the wife to live with the uncle for a while. Fan Zijan got married years ago, and his marriage had twists and turns, which made him look a little gloomy, and made Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling feel even more guilty towards him. The Xia family had already discussed his son's marriage after his return. After all, Qi Heiran got married 2 months younger than him, and Fan Zijan couldn't be too late. But Fan Zijan only had the fame of a scholar, and his father was only a third-rank official. If he had been in the capital, he might be able to marry the daughter of a fourth-rank official, but he went to the border for 5 or 6 years. Because they didn't know his character, the people who loved their daughter didn't agree to Xia's marriage proposal. Fan Zijan also attached great importance to his marriage. After seeing this situation, he resolutely said that he would talk about marriage after passing the exam. He couldn't let him throw away a piece of Minjiao at random, right? The Xia family also held his breath, and felt that his son was the best, so he just secretly looked at the ladies of each family and waited for his son to go to high school. Sure enough, Fan Zijan was in the 2nd grade of Kaiowei High School, and more people were willing to talk to the Fan family. The Xia family had also taken a fancy to the two families and wanted to compare them, but Fan Zijan asked Chunwei to talk about it later. The quotations of Juran and Jinchi are different. What's more, Fan Zijian has not yet reached the crown. So when Fan Zijian Chunwei also entered the second class, the threshold of the Fan family was almost broken, and because of this, Xia's vision became higher, and Fan Zijian was finally appointed as the eldest daughter of the right servant family of the third-rank official department. She married a girl with her head up, and married a woman with her head down, so this girl is considered a low marriage. After all, her natal family is on the same level as the Fan family. In terms of background, it is even higher than the Fan family. The reason why their family agreed to this marriage is because of Fan Zijian's talent. Superior. So when Fan Zijian missed the Shujishi exam and said that he was not as good as an official in the court, their family was out of anger. What's the point of marrying their daughter to Fan Zijian if they don't become officials in the court? The marriage that had just been arranged was cancelled, and the Xia family finally made another marriage for Fan Zijian exhausted, which is the current Xia family. Although the same surname is Xia, she has nothing to do with the Xia family. Her father is the fourth-rank magistrate, the same year as Fan Siwen, and he is straightforward and generous. Married his daughter to him. And he was willing to shorten the marriage period for Fan Zijian, marrying his daughter after only 5 months of engagement. One can imagine how hasty it was. The reason why Lord Xia agreed to this marriage is that he really loves Xiao Xia. Xiao Xia is his first daughter, shy and even a little cowardly since she was a child. He was worried that she would be eaten to death if she married an official wife. The rest, I met Fan Zijian. Fan Zijian is not good at all, but he is capable. If he is willing to treat his daughter sincerely, then his daughter will have a good home. Fan Zijian got married smoothly, but Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling had a hard time getting along. He felt that Qi Heiran was involved in his resignation because he didn't take the exam for a concubine. Not only Qi Heiran blamed himself, but Mu Yangling wrote a letter scolding Qi Heiran. It was Fan Zijian who found out and blamed Mu Yangling instead. Qi Heiran is still in the midst of life and death. Isn't it a distraction for you to write to scold him? If something happens to him, will your conscience be at ease? After scolding Mu Yangling a lot, Mu Yangling rarely contradicted him, and obediently bowed his head to be scolded. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 536. Mu Yangling went straight into Li Jinghua's inner room and woke her up without disturbing others. Li Jinghua opened her eyes and was startled when she saw Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling gently covered her mouth and said in a low voice, "Sister-in-law, let's get up and leave." Li Jinghua's complexion changed slightly, but she didn't ask any more questions. She got up and got dressed, and when Kui woke up outside, and hurriedly asked in a low voice, "Is grandma going to get up?" Li Jinghua froze and looked at Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and Li Jinghua said, "Come in." Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua didn't take away many people, except for the women and girls around them who knew how to do legwork. Mu Yangling took Li Shun, Li Jinghua took Wen Kui, and the wet nurses of the 2 children followed. Everyone stays. When Mu Yangling was preparing things for running, he also prepared Li Jinghua and Xiaobeos, so they could leave after changing into light clothes. A woman who knows Kung Fu took the initiative to pick up the sleeping baby, and Mu Yangling also handed the little bear to a woman who was protecting him. Both children were wrapped in blankets, and the woman was wearing a cloak, keeping the child carefully. "Hold it in your arms to avoid being blown by the wind." A group of people quietly left through the angled door. After they left, Wang Ma extinguished the incense in every corner, and accompanied Gu Yuanmian and turned back to the yard. After they left the angled door, Fan Zijian nodded slightly at them, and left with Yan Mo. And Mu Yangling led them in another direction after their figures disappeared completely. Except for the pale faces of the 2 wet nurses, everyone's faces were quite calm. Because they were all women, their footsteps were not heavy. Ring the side door of a small courtyard. The people in the door quietly opened the small door to let them in. There were already about a dozen young people standing in the yard, obviously just got out of bed. Mu Yangling only nodded slightly at them, and then led them into the house, without any intention of discussing matters. Only then did Li Jinghua fully understand that Mu Yangling had been prepared. After entering the house, Mu Yangling pointed to the big Kong bed in the house and said, "Let's all lie down and rest for a while, we will leave as soon as the city gate opens." At this time, there is only an hour before the opening of the city gate. After training, the women and girls who know Kung Fu can sit upright and peacefully, and they can even rest on the chairs with their eyes closed, but the two wet nurses but a little flustered. Mu Yangling looked at them, nodded and smiled slightly. "Don't worry, your family is safe." The two nurses breathed a sigh of relief and felt slightly relieved. Mu Yangling turned to Li Jinghua and said, "Sister-in-law, I will explain to you later, we have to hurry, you should take this opportunity to rest." Li Jinghua glanced at me at everyone in the room, nodded slightly, and slept next to the two children on the couch beside her. But she couldn't fall asleep at all, and was woken up in a daze. She opened her eyes and saw that Mu Yangling was already washing up, and she got busy taking care of herself. When they went out, the people in the yard were already ready, and Mu Yangling asked Li Jinghua and the two children to share a carriage with her, while the others sat in separate carriages. After going out the door, Li Jinghua opened the curtain and took a look, only to see 7 or 8 carts in the alley, all pulled by mules, covered with oiled paper, which looked like goods. At this time, the sky was still dark, and even with the lanterns on, she still couldn't see what was tied up on the car. Mu Yangling saw it and explained, "It's full of tea leaves. Ours is a caravan, selling tea from the south to the north." Mu Yangling explained the origin of their fabrication in detail. When she said this, the carriage started. The city gates were not open at this time, but the curfew was over, so they could walk in the city. At the gate of the city, Li Jinghua lifted the curtain slightly to take a look, and found that there were quite a few caravans leaving the city early, and they were in the middle of each other, which relieved her a little anxious mood. Mu Yangling knew that she was anxious, but she didn't know how to comfort her at this moment, because she agreed with anxiety, and it was only safe to go out of the range of Linen City. When the time came, the city gate slowly opened, and the soldiers guarding the gate were not very strict in checking the caravan leaving the city. Linen City is the capital of the Great Zhou dynasty. There are countless merchants coming and going every day. In order to hurry up, there are many caravans that leave the city and enter the city early every day. Because of the war, the number of caravans has decreased during this period. For the more familiar caravan leaders, they mostly check the documents symbolically and then let them go, while the unfamiliar ones just check the goods, and the inspection of the caravans entering the city should not be strict. After all, it is now during the sensitive period, they are afraid of assassins, secret operations, and the like. So there are 2 gates, one goes out of the city, and the other enters the city. The way out of the city is very fast. Only one caravan enters the entrance to the city, and 4 or 5 can go out here, so it is Mu Yangling's turn soon. Not only Li Jinghua, but also Mu Yangling tensed up. Although the gatekeeper was not familiar with their team leaders, he was familiar with them. He knew that they were going to sell tea, so he just flipped through the paperwork symbolically, and pointed to 2 of the carriages that were obviously carrying people and asked, "Why are there so many people, too? I remember you used to have only 1 carriage. The steward used to sit in that carriage, but now there are 2 more." The steward immediately nodded and bowed his waist and said, "The 2 grandmas and 2 young masters of our family are sitting on it. This is not in chaos. Our master doesn't want to go into business anymore, so he wants to take the 2 grandmas and 2 young masters back." The gatekeeper stepped forward and opened the curtain. Li Jinghua and Mu Yangling both hugged the child and lowered their heads honestly. The gatekeeper turned his eyes around their clothes and headgear, then lowered the curtain, nodded slightly, and waved, "Let's go." But in my heart, I curled my lips with jealousy and disdain, and it was the concubine, grandmas, these businessmen are really good enough to enjoy themselves. Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua breathed a sigh of relief until the entire convoy had left the city gate. Mu Yangling lowered his voice and said, "Let's go quickly, and follow the itinerary we set before." The steward outside the car responded and told people to speed up. It was more than half an hour after they left the city, the sky was only slightly bright, and when the sun appeared in the sky and the sun gradually rose, the servants of Qi Mansion realized that something was wrong. Today, the West Mansion is too quiet. But because the two sides lived separately, although the servants had doubts, they didn't think much about it until the sun rose, and the steward who came to report the matter did not see Li Jinghua for a long time, nor did she see the girl beside her to explain. That's not right. In the end, everyone could only ask a little girl to go to Zifu to ask if Li Jinghua still listened to the report today. The little girl who was looking for someone knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no answer, let alone someone opening the door, so she panicked and hurried back to report. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 537. There are two gates between the East Mansion and the West Mansion. People from the Wu family are guarding the door near the East Mansion, but Mu Yangling's people are on the West Mansion. It was only relocked at night, and the sun has risen for half a day today. They didn't open the door, and there was no response after knocking on the door for so long. Could it be something serious? The little girl didn't know what to think of. She was so frightened that she rushed all the way into the main courtyard, shouting, "Something happened, something big happened." Since Li Jinghua seized power, Wu has been depressed. Hearing the commotion outside, he said angrily, "What's the commotion outside? How does Grandma manage the house?" Grandma Wu stepped in quickly, a little excited but also worried. The little girl said something happened in the West Mansion, so she won't open the door no matter what you call. Oh, Wu rolled her eyes, got up and said, "Let's go and have a look." She has been trying to catch Li Jinghua's handle, but she can't catch anything. Instead, Li Jinghua has uncovered many old accounts. What she likes to hear most now is the news of the accident in the West Mansion. A group of people arrived at the gate of the West Mansion in a mighty manner. Mrs. Wu called someone to call the door, but found that there was really no response at all, so she turned around and asked, "Didn't the people from the West Mansion come out today?" Although Zayatang has a small kitchen, it is only in charge of eating for the four masters, and the servants still get their meals from the big kitchen, so their work and rest are the same as other courtyards in the mansion. Returning to Madam, no one came to pick up food from Zayat Hall and Zayahua courtyard today, including the small garden, and no one came to pick up the food at the west corner gate. Wu frowned slightly, waved her hand and said, "Ask someone to kick the door open." After the door was kicked open, everyone rushed in, only to find that the woman guarding the door was still lying on the bed and sleeping soundly. It was obviously impossible to sleep so soundly when there was so much noise outside. Take people to Zayat Hall. In Zayat Hall, the servants were also sleeping peacefully, but Li Jinghua and her maid were gone. When I went to Zayahua courtyard again, Mu Yangling and the two children also disappeared with the maid. Thinking of the imperial guards guarding outside, the two battles broke out for a while, and all the previous pride disappeared. She turned her head and stared at them fiercely, saying, "You guys didn't see anything today. If you want to live, just give me your mouth, shut it up." Wu urgently sent someone to call Qi Feng back. Now the civil and military affairs of the whole dynasty are busy, and Qi Feng is also so busy that he doesn't touch the ground. When he was called back, his face was very ugly, but he knew Mrs. Wu, if there was no serious incident, she would not have asked someone to call him. Mrs. Wu waved the man back, took Qi Feng's hand and cried, "Master, something serious happened. Mrs. Li and Mrs. Mi ran away with their children." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Qi Feng reprimanded in a low voice. It's true. If you don't believe me, go and see. The girls and women in Zayatatang and Zayahuayuan are all asleep, but they and their 2 children are gone. Chi Feng's complexion changed, and he took Mrs. Wu to the 2 courtyards. The West Mansion was still quiet. Mrs. Wu knew that some things should not be made public, so although she was extremely terrified, she didn't want to wake up those people, otherwise the people in the mansion with the movement must not be concealed. Chi Feng walked around, bowed his head in thought for a moment, and said, "They were taken away by someone." Wu's complexion changed, and he opened his mouth, but he still didn't say anything. Chi Feng was terrified. He didn't know whether the 2 daughters-in-law left by themselves or were taken away by others. What do Chi Ziyuan and Chi Heiran want to do? Rebel. Then how can we leave him? The whole Chi family is here, isn't this pushing them into the fire pit? Chi Feng is now angry and anxious. He doesn't know if Chi Ziyuan has that in mind, but he thinks that now that wars are raging everywhere, not only the rebel armies everywhere are dominating the king, but also some generals directly lead their soldiers to rebel. Most of those people were below the 3rd rank, and no family members stayed in Linen City, and Chi Ziyuan now has nearly 180,000 soldiers and horses in his hands. Did he also have that thought? Chi Feng was in great pain. At this moment, he felt a little regretful. He regretted that he had neglected his 2 sons too much. He had no idea what the 2 sons were thinking. But no matter how much he regretted it, in order to save his life and his family, he could only define this matter as robbery, otherwise the Chi family will have no way out. Chi Feng sent Wu Shi back to the main courtyard, hurriedly ran out to find the imperial guards guarding the gate, and told them that Li Shi, Mu Shi, and their children were missing. The captain of the Forbidden Army's complexion changed drastically, and he rushed in with his people, and then quickly asked people to restrain the people in Huankai's mansion, while he rushed into the palace to report. When the emperor sent people out of the city to chase after them, Mu Yangling and the others had already changed teams and left in a different direction. The original team had 2 women and 2 children living in them. They were similar in stature to Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua. The investigators suspected that their caravan was coming in pursuit, and they would probably give up their mines when they saw them. The convoy headed north, and they hardly stopped except for necessary supplies. Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua didn't know that Linen City was in chaos because of their disappearance. Before the Chi family came to report, the captains of the Forbidden Army guarding the 3 generals had come to report, and their family members were more or less taken away, but most of them were the direct descendants of the generals, and most of the female family members were taken away. Stayed. Compared with the other 3 families, the number of people who disappeared from the Chi family is not too many, but they are the most important. Everyone knows that Chi Ziyuan and his brothers are at odds with their father, and the only way to control them is to control their wives and children. The emperor asked in a low voice, "How is General Yuan's family?" "No one from the Yuan family is missing." The emperor nodded slightly. The reason why no one in the Yuan family was missing was because he placed the most forbidden troops in the Yuan family, almost surrounding the Yuan family, while the other 4 families, including the Qi family, only focused on guarding the gate. After all, their roots were much shallower. Who knows that something happened to them? The emperor narrowed his eyes slightly and asked, "Do you think they escaped by themselves, or were they kidnapped?" The imperial guards below all lowered their heads. The emperor sighed, "You don't know." "I don't know either, the current situation is too chaotic, and it is impossible to find out who did it. Send people to investigate and try to bring them back. The safety of the hostages is the most important thing." The emperor waved his hand and said, "Don't say anything about this matter for the time being. It will be a while if you can keep it secret. The UN mansion will strengthen its vigilance." Several people bowed and retreated. The emperor called the hidden guards and said, "Go and investigate, why did they all disappear at this time?" At the same time, Qin Xiang also became anxious, and said in a low voice, "The matter is ahead of schedule, the emperor may be aware of it." The person sitting opposite Qin asked anxiously, "Who the hell is attacking the family members of the generals at this time?" Qin Xiang shook his head, "The situation is too chaotic now, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time to investigate, we are on business." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 538. The trace has been found, but when we found it, someone was interfering again. We only need a little more time, and the humble official will definitely find him. The leader of the Dark Guard bowed his head and knelt under the hall. The emperor asked in an old voice, "Did they escape by themselves, or were they captured?" Back to the emperor, the lowly position can't be found out for the time being. If it is said that they escaped by themselves, the time is too uniform, and the minister found out that there are several forces among them during the investigation, but if it is said that they were taken captive, the methods are not the same. It's not like what the same group of people did at all. The emperor bent his body and looked up at him. It was only a year, but he seemed to be 10 years old, and his energy seemed to have been exhausted. He was silent for a while, and asked, "How long will it take?" 3 days. The emperor nodded slightly, waved his hand and said, "Go, get him back as soon as possible, we won't be able to hide it for long." At the same time, Zhu Liangzheng asked Fan Zijin in a low voice, "Young Master Biao, do you want to spread the news about the disappearance of the family members of the generals?" Fan Zijin shook his head, "We have already exposed a lot of traces, and it is better to be still than to move at this time. Both inside and outside the capital are now covered with the emperor's eyeliner. If they move, there is a high chance of being exposed. Send all our people back," he said, looking up at the starry sky. "Whether they can escape or not depends on their own abilities." The man was released with the help of Fan Zijin. As soon as Mu Yangling came out of the city gate, he immediately asked someone to pass some specious news to the families of the 3 generals. The other party sent several family members away as expected, which was regarded as keeping the fire of each family. There was no general who would lead his troops out without leaving behind. In addition to the fact that the emperor detained his family members in the palace last year, they were all prepared for their lives just like the Qi family. Therefore, they each escaped with their own methods, and the traces of their methods are completely different, which caused headaches for the hidden guards. When they went to investigate, there were several forces obstructing them, so they were even more uncertain: did people escape by themselves, or were they taken captive? In Linen City, several forces were busy non-stop, but Fan Zijin withdrew all the people and stayed at home leisurely. He decided to find an opportunity to let his parents have a big fight tonight, and then he took the opportunity to send his mother and wife away. Walk. Although I am not the most important thing in my mother's heart, she is the best to me in this family after all. Staying here will definitely tie his hands and feet, it is better to send him away. But the plan could never keep up with the changes. Xia Shigong agreed sadly to take Xiao Xia to Zhu's house for a period of time the next day, and that night, there was a sound of shouting and killing in the inner city of Linen City. Fan Zijin almost jumped out of the bed, and asked with a tense body, "Yan Mo, what's going on outside?" Yan Mo rushed in with a pale face, and said, "The slave doesn't know, but there are shouts of killing from both the inner city and the imperial city." "So fast," Fan Zijin murmured in a low voice, not expecting the other party to move so quickly. He hurriedly got up and put on his clothes, and ran to the main room. Xiao Xia just got up too, with a flustered expression on her face. When she saw her husband coming, she rushed over as if she had found a backbone. Mr. Fan Zijin waved his hand, "Pack up some simple things right now, and I'll take you there to see your mother." Xiao Xia didn't dare to ask more questions, so she hurriedly asked the girl to pick up the 2 packages. The other girls and women in the room all looked at Fan Zijin and his wife eagerly. Fan Zijin waved his hand and said, "Call everyone in the upper courtyard to go to the main courtyard since they couldn't get out, it would be safer to gather together." The girls and women breathed a sigh of relief, and hurried out to inform everyone. After a bit of confusion in the main courtyard, it became orderly. Fan Siwen was sitting on the main seat and looked at the people in the courtyard with a sullen face, while Xiaoxi stood at the door and kept ordering everyone to put away the important things, and restrain the people in the house. Take good care of everything and don't mess around. It has to be said that although the Xia family has a hot temper, she is indeed very good at being a housekeeper. Fan Siwen nodded in relief, but he didn't know that the Xia family didn't know these things at the beginning. They all learned them slowly in the backyard. Fan Zijin brought someone over. Xiaoxi rushed to meet him, took his hand distressedly and said, "You're not scared, are you? Hurry up to the house, your father is inside." Fan Zijin nodded slightly, then turned to Xiao Xia and said, "Stay with your mother and share some of the burden for her." Xiao Xia couldn't wish for it, so he followed Xia's. Although Xiaoxi was not very satisfied with this daughter-in-law, she only had such a son, so she would naturally teach her, so she left Xiao Xia behind. "What's going on outside?" Fan Siwen asked. "Father doesn't even know, how can I, a Jinchi, know?" Fan Siwen snorted coldly, "Don't think I don't know what you're busy with outside. You have the power of Ziyuan, how could you not know anything? Now is the time when a country and a family are dying, and you still plan to make trouble with me twist." Fan Zijin sneered in his heart, but said, "Father said yes, but I really don't know what happened. My eldest cousin asked me to run some forces, but it was just to keep my cousin, nephew, and others safe. I don't know much about state affairs, and it's even more impossible for me to know things that my father didn't even know when he was an official in court." Fan Siwen sighed and believed it 70%. Fan Zijin continued, "Although I don't know exactly what happened, I can guess from the sound that it is probably who rebelled, and that person should be of high status, otherwise how could he directly start from the inner city and the imperial city?" Fan Siwen thought of the princes, sighed, and said, "Restrain the servants, we will stay in the mansion and listen to the news. There is nothing they can do except this way." The shouts of killing outside were loud, and at this time, Emperor Jinjian was laughing haha and circling in the hall. "Rebellion, rebellion at this time? Idiot, what an idiot, why did I give birth to such an idiot? He wants to be emperor sooner, tell me, and I will give it to you with both hands." He walked up and down the hall in annoyance, then stopped and asked, "Where did you go?" The secret guard knelt on the ground and said, "We have arrived outside the Chongzheng Palace." The Buddhist beads in the queen's hand fell to the ground, and the emperor's expression darkened, and he waved his hand and said, "Go down." The queen looked at the emperor, saw that he had a weird expression, so she rushed up to hold him back and said, "Your Majesty, don't be foolish, the second prince will not want a supreme emperor to exist. You go, take a few little princes and leave quickly." The emperor was annoyed, "Great Zhou is about to perish, why do I still want to be the emperor? If he wants to be me, I will send it to him." "Your Majesty," the queen interrupted him, looked into his eyes and said seriously, "You should think it is for the blood of the Guo family, otherwise, if the second prince rushes in, none of the other princes will be able to live." "You also said, I'm afraid Dezhou can't hold it anymore." The queen cried bitterly. "It's not that she is not afraid, nor does she have much affection for those princes and daughters, but she is a queen, and she knows her responsibility. Dezhou is about to perish, so at least she has to leave a queen for the Guo family." The queen looked up at this man, feeling disappointed, and then turned into despair. This man has no sense of responsibility in his life, but this time, he must keep a bloodline of the Guo family anyway, otherwise she will have the face to meet the ancestors of the Guo family after she dies. Zone. The emperor pursed his lips, but was finally taken away by the empress back to the hidden guards. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 539. Li Jinghua looked tired and asked, "Are we going back to Jingzhou Mansion?" "No, Jingzhou Mansion is too far away, so the child can't be jolted." Mu Yangling adjusted the bear's posture to make him feel better. The little bear nestled in his mother's arms and hummed a few times, then lay down in her arms with his eyes slightly closed, and Xiao Bao also lay on the side tiredly with his eyes closed. They have been on the road for 3 days in a row. Except for the novelty at the beginning, the children have not talked much these 2 days. Fortunately, they are also good. Although they are uncomfortable, most of them just hum a few words and rarely cry. Seeing that Xiaobao's face turned blue, Li Jinghua was a little irritable, wondering how many more days he would have to go on the road. As soon as the idea came to mind, Bailiu, the leader of the guards, heard a joyful voice from outside, "Eldest grandma, fourth grandma, we have arrived." Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua opened the curtain to see, not far ahead was the entrance of a small village. Mu Yangling was shocked and smiled, "Let's go in." Yes. After the carriage entered the village entrance, it turned and headed towards a mountain. There was a large courtyard with blue bricks and grey tiles halfway up the mountain. Bailey went to knock on the door. The steward inside opened the door and took a look at the token in Bailey's hand. He hurriedly opened the door to let them in. Mu Yangling and Li Jinghua got out of the car with their children in the yard. The yard has 3 entrances and 3 exits. It is spacious and clean, which makes people feel at ease. Mu Yangling looked back at the steward and asked, "You are Chen Ming?" Chen Ming hurriedly bent over and said, "Yes, the young one is really Chen Ming." Mu Yangling nodded slightly, "Go ask your daughter-in-law to prepare some fresh vegetables, make porridge and bring them here, the young masters are all hungry." Chen Ming took a careful look at the child in her arms, bowed his head in response, and retreated respectfully. Bailey hurriedly led them to the backyard. Mu Yangling put Xiao Xiang and Xiaobao together, and said to Li Shun, "Take someone out, Grandma and I have something to say." Li Jinghua sat on the Kong with a sullen face. Mu Yangling touched Xiaobao's head, raised his head and said, "Sister-in-law, this yard was arranged more than a year ago, and it was passed by Mr. Liu. No one except me knew that I was going to use this yard. Now today, neither Big Brother nor Heiran know we are here." Li Jinghua's complexion changed slightly, and he asked, "What are you doing? Are you hiding from the Emperor, lest he threaten the general with us? But now we are hiding, how will we show up in the future?" Mu Yangling looked up at Li Jinghua seriously, and said, "Sister-in-law, what Big Brother has to do is destined to prevent us from staying in Linen City." Li Jinghua's complexion changed drastically, and her guesses for many days finally came true. She covered her chest, her eyes were moist, and she couldn't help asking, "You have all discussed it, and you only keep it from me? Does Qi Ziyuan still think that I am his wife?" Mu Yangling hurriedly explained, "Sister-in-law misunderstood, elder brother wanted to tell you, but this is a major event of beheading, elder brother was more cautious, after you gave birth to Xiaobao, he always wanted to tell you personally, but because the Holy Majesty supervised our letters, and things have been delayed. I received a secret letter some time ago, and my elder brother hinted that I would pass it on to you." Mu Yangling emphasized, "Eldest brother wants to tell you personally. It's a big deal." Li Jinghua sneered, "Of course it's a big deal. Since you know it's a big deal to be beheaded, why did you marry me in the first place?" Mu Yangling was a little anxious, "Sister-in-law, it's only after Fuping's incident that Big Brother thought about it. Not many people know about it." Li Jinghua suddenly had an association in her mind. That time her husband pretended to be seriously ill, and Mu Yangling had to come in to celebrate. It turned out that it was not just to reject the marriage arranged by the emperor for Qi Heiran. Li Jinghua looked at Mu Yangling, who looked anxious, restrained his anger slightly, and asked, "Then when did you know?" Mu Yangling frowned, "I knew it when I came back from Fuping." Li Jinghua lowered her eyes. Maybe the brothers of the Qi family trusted Mu Yangling so much not only because she grew up with Qi Heiran's childhood sweetheart, but also because she knew what she shouldn't know by chance. That's why Qi Ziyuan was so anxious to let Qi Heiran marry him. Li Jinghua is a smart person. The biggest characteristic of a smart person is that he likes to complicate simple things. Thinking of this, she felt less resentment towards Mu Yangling, and sighed, "Then who else knows about this? Brother Zijin and Brother Rong know it, and Master Yuan Hui knows it too." Mu Yangling thought about it seriously, then shook his head and said, "I probably don't know anything else." Li Jinghua asked curiously, "Does your father not know?" Mu Yangling nodded. "Brother said the time is not yet ripe, so let's not tell him." Li Jinghua looked at her speechless for a while, and said, "You trust the general, whether he says it or not. You never thought of telling your father in private?" Mu Yangling asked blankly, "Brother has always been very kind to us, of course I trust him, and besides, the elder brother didn't make a fuss immediately. Telling my father is just worrying him in vain." Li Jinghua looked at the blankness in Mu Yangling's eyes, and felt a little embarrassed. Speaking of which, she and Qi Ziyuan are the closest. If Qi Ziyuan succeeds, she will benefit the most. Guessing from this incident, the Mu family seemed to have been cheated by her husband. Li Jinghua hurriedly changed the subject and asked, "Why are we leaving so suddenly this time?" "Yes, is it time?" Mu Yangling shook his head. "Brother Zijin said that there is an abnormality outside the city, and it's too dangerous for us to stay there. Anyway, we were going to leave. Why don't we chase this Jiaozong?" Li Jinghua looked at Mu Yangling, who was full of confidence, and sighed in her heart. This sister-in-law is very shrewd and capable in some things, but she is a little naive in some things. As soon as the thought came to an end, Mu Yangling said flatteringly, "Sister-in-law, the village we live in is far away from the town, and it has nothing to do with the main fortress. Counting up to 300 years, there are many natural disasters, but soldiers the disaster is the least, so we live here very safely. The mansion only bought 2 servants, and even the girls and women we brought with us are only 14 in total. You should make arrangements accordingly." Li Jinghua knew that she didn't like to take care of these trivial matters, so she said with a smile, "You are pushing all these things to me now. What will you do in the future? You have also learned from me as a housekeeper for several months, and you used to be in good order." "Why is that?" "Like to run to Zhuangzi." Li Jinghua persuaded her in a low voice, "A family like ours has everything to eat and wear. The mistress only needs to take care of the housework and raise the children. There is really no need to go to the fields." Seeing that the anger between her brows had disappeared, Mu Yangling knew that the crisis was over, so she said with a smile, "Isn't there a sister-in-law? We specialize in surgery." Li Jinghua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of specialization is this? Having said that, Li Jinghua still proceeded to arrange the servants in the mansion. In the evening, they ate hot meals, took a hot bath, and washed the 2 children in the wooden basin again. The fatigue of the past few days has been eliminated a lot. Mu Yangling threw the child to Li Jinghua and ran to see Bailey. "Is there any news from the capital?" They were so busy traveling and hiding their tracks that they didn't have time to inquire about things in the capital, so they naturally wanted to ask after they settled down today. Bailey bowed his head and said, "The second prince and Qin Xiang forced the palace, the empress was burned to death in the Cunning Palace, the first prince, the third prince and the fourth prince were all killed in the forced palace, and the other little princes either disappeared or were imprisoned. Now Linen City is in chaos. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 540. Second Prince. Mu Yangling thought about it seriously, but found that this person was only a vague figure in her impression, and she didn't expect to be able to do such a thing as forcing the palace. Let people continue to pay attention. If there is any news from the general and fourth master, they should send it back as soon as possible. Bailey responded and asked, "Fourth Grandma, do you want to tell the general and fourth master our address so that they won't worry?" Mu Yangling thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "Wait a little longer, contact us when our matter fades away. It's still too dangerous now. By the way, how many family members are missing?" Bailey said in shame, "I don't know if it's the news of the Imperial Court's closure, or this place is too backward, we can't get any news about it. It's just for people to pay attention, don't worry too much about it. It's very late today, tomorrow you ask Chen Ming to find the village chief and Li Zhang, we will stay here for a long time, and try our best to build a good relationship with them. Bailey should go down." The village head and Li Zheng had already prepared, and they came almost as soon as Chen Ming invited them. This is a remote and impoverished small mountain village. The wealthiest family in the village has 3 green brick and tile houses, left by their ancestors, with 60 acres of land left by their ancestors. As a result, the Zhu family bought it not far from the village a year ago. They bought more than 100 acres of wasteland and asked people to open up wasteland for farming. They also bought a hill in the village and built a big yard on it. Even the yard was made of blue bricks, which was very grand. But the village head and Li Zheng were not very happy. They were afraid that Zhujiao would be bullied by the villagers. Among other things, Zhujiao was really willing to only cultivate the 100 acres of wasteland. When they gain a firm foothold in the village, they may have to buy land from the villagers. Although Li Zheng and the village chief have little experience, they have heard and seen some of the tricks commonly used by landlords. Some deceive people into owed money, and then charge high interest, forcing people to sell their land, and even seduce the officials above directly turn the fields into wasteland, and then into their land. As soon as the two of them thought about all kinds of means, they would shudder, so they really wanted to see what kind of temperament the Zhu family had. If it was really bad, they should inform the villagers early to stay away from them. It is impossible for Li Jinghua to come out to meet the two of them. She thinks it is enough for Chen Ming to meet them. The village chief and Li Zheng are strangers after all, but Mu Yangling grew up in the countryside and has no taboos about these things. Relationship, so I came out to meet people in person. The village chief and Li Zheng saw a woman coming out, and they frowned slightly. Mu Yangling smiled and said, "This is the village chief and Li Zheng, right? I am the fourth grandma of the Zhu family. Our uncle and fourth master are still in Beijing land, you have to arrange things before you come back." Because they wanted to avoid the court's eyes and ears, they changed Qi to Zhu. Anyway, Qi Ziyuan's mother's surname was Zhu. Li Zheng's expression softened a little when he heard the words, and he hurriedly asked with a smile, "I don't know what kind of life the Zhu family and the fourth master are doing." "What, why do you want to settle in our small place?" "Our uncle and fourth master were doing some small business in the north, and we could barely make ends meet. Now that the war is raging, we can't stay in the north anymore, so we sent us and our children back first. It's also because we are destined, we are alone. My cousin's natal family is near here, and I was going to go to their village, and the fields have been bought, but the Taoist priest invited by our fourth master passed by here, saying that the mountains here are good and good for health, and our children are not in good health. Weak, so the uncle and the fourth master temporarily decided to build their home here." Li Zheng was shocked, and asked, "So the Zhu family has land in the village?" Mu Yangling smiled and nodded, "There are 100 or 200 acres, not much, and they are all under the management of the village head." "Then why are you still buying wasteland in our village?" "Since we are building a house here, we can't justify it if we don't buy some wasteland. Moreover, it will be convenient for us to plant something near here." Li Zheng and the village head looked at each other, and they were both a little silent. Mu Yangling knew what they were thinking, but what she said and what she did at this time were superfluous, so she smiled and said, "Now our family, women and children, are here alone. Please, the village chief and Li Zheng are taking care of them, and if the village has any difficulties in the future, they can tell our family, and we will lend a hand to those who can help." Li Zheng and the village head were begging them not to reach out, so how could they dare to come to their door, so they just bowed and declined politely. Mu Yangling didn't force it, and asked Chen Ming to greet them after saying a few words. Li Zheng and the village head were busy asking Chen Ming who the cousin of the Zhu family was. Although they might not be from the same village, they could be from the same township. The cousin Mu Yangling mentioned was the sister-in-law of Mr. Liu's wife. In terms of identity, the Zhu family and Mr. Liu had a relationship that could be reached with 5 poles, and then involved the relationship with the cousin who could not be reached with 8 poles. Li Zheng and the village head were full of mosquito coils when they heard Chen Ming finish counting the relatives who had turned more than 18 turns, and their hearts turned cold. They could only hope that Zhu's family was a kind family, and don't bully them poor people. Li Jinghua and Mu Yangling didn't go out all the time, and all the purchases such as buying vegetables and meat were handed over to Chen Ming. The other servants were also arranged by Li Jinghua in an orderly manner. Although the quality of life had dropped a lot, fortunately they were out of danger. Mu Yangling organized the guards into 3 shifts and set up defenses inside and outside the yard. As long as there was any change, they would be able to find out that the whole yard was airtight by her before anyone entered the village. Li Jinghua has seen the defense map drawn by Mu Yangling on paper. Although she can't understand it, she also knows that the courtyard is arranged by Mu Yangling, which improves the safety a lot. At least the outer courtyard is under their sight. No one can get past the guards and enter the inner courtyard. Li Jinghua admired, "Are you talented, or have you learned it?" Mu Yangling didn't dare to say that he had learned it in his previous life, but said, "It's half a talent, and I also learned it from Heiran." Li Jinghua nodded, no wonder he played so well with Qi Heiran. "Mother, auntie," Little Treasure rushed over, hugged Li Jinghua's hand and said, "Go play, go play." Mu Yangling reached out and touched his pale face, and asked, "Have you eaten the porridge I made for you?" "Eat," Xiao Bao said, "it's delicious, better than milk." "Your face is still a little pale, sister-in-law, let the doctor make some adjustments for Wang Momo later, write some medicinal recipes, eat health-preserving porridge, and have a lot of milk." Li Jinghua nodded, patted his son's head, turned to look at the little bear on the couch beside him who was twisting his body to eat his legs, and said, "Xiaobao's body is still too weak, obviously the little bear is younger than him, so he only needs to rest. He regained his energy overnight, but he is still pale." It was also premature, but Cub was very healthy, but her son was congenitally deficient and weak. Thinking that she might only have the son in her whole life, she couldn't help but feel a little sad. Mu Yangling hurriedly said, "The child is still young, and he will get better after taking care of it slowly." The doctor also said that Xiaobao's health has improved a lot. Li Jinghua nodded slightly, patted his son's head and got up and said, "Let's go, Xiaobao, mother will take you out to play." Little Treasure looked eagerly at his younger brother on the couch, and Li Jinghua smiled and said, "Don't worry, I can't leave your younger brother behind." She asked the wet nurse to pick up the little bear and go to the yard to play together. Seeing that he could go out, the little bear jumped happily into the nurse's arms twice, and leaned his whole body out, as if he had been locked up for 10 or 8 years before being released. Li Jinghua was amused by that eager look. He and Mu Yangling laughed straight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 541. Although this place is remote and quiet, it is not very far from Linan City, only 3 days away, so the news of Linen City spread quickly. So, Mu Yangling and others knew that the second prince and Prime Minister Qin joined hands to force the palace the next day after they left, and the empress was buried in a sea of flames, but within 2 days, Bailey brought back new news from the county. Emperor Jinjian did not die, he regrouped 60,000 loyal imperial troops and stayed 30 miles outside Linen City, and ordered all the generals to command troops to serve the king, so Bailey, who was not too far away from them, also received the news. Fourth Grandma, although this place is remote, if a war breaks out in Linen City, I'm afraid refugees will end up here. Shall we find another safe place? Mu Yangling shook his head. Where is there a stable place in this world? Running back and forth is more dangerous, so just stay here and ask someone to guard the yard. Mu Yangling lowered his head and thought for a while. Since the emperor is not dead, we have to be more careful. Don't contact the uncle and fourth master recently. This small mountain village is indeed remote and quiet, and it is self-sufficient in the first place, so even if there is a war outside, it will not have much impact on them. Although they still have no food and clothing, they are much better than the refugees who lost their homes due to the war outside. Originally, the village head and Li Zheng were worried that the imperial court would force conscription. After all, there are wars every year, and such things are inevitable. However, there is chaos outside, and there are many regimes, and everyone arrests young men nearby. However, because this small mountain village is remote and there is no political power nearby, the imperial court is panicking. I didn't bother here for a while. The village head and Li Zheng were rejoicing, and restrained the villagers even more, not allowing them to leave the village casually, so as not to provoke outsiders. A few small villages nearby did the same. As a result, 7 or 8 nearby villages have passed the days of isolation, of course, except for the Zhu family. Both the village head and Li Zheng knew that people from the Zhu family went out of the village to the city every day, but they only bought some things. After observing for a while, the village head felt relieved. The whole village and Zhu's family seemed to be separated into 2 sides. Although they are clearly separated, they live in peace. Life in the village is leisurely, but the outside is chaotic like a raging fire, and the situation changes from day to day. Emperor Jinjian issued an edict to the generals from all walks of life to King Qin, but there were only 4 people who were willing to lead troops to King Qin. One was General Yuan, the other was General Qi, and there were 2 others. It is the Yellow Ginseng General who leads 30,000 troops. Qi Ziyuan personally led the troops from the east of Tongchuan Mansion, General Yuan also personally led the troops to the south, and General Guo was one of the 5 generals whose family members were detained by the emperor. But he was still unwilling to let his elderly mother be in danger in Linen City, so when the emperor gave the order, he immediately left those rebels and rushed over. General Guo is only thinking about his mother, but General Yuan can't do it. He only brought 50,000 people south this time, and he left more people at the border. Jinguo still needs to be on guard, even if the emperor goes down. The 3 gold medals asked him to bring all the troops, and General Yuan just pretended not to see them. And Qi Ziyuan came here to do things cheaply. Although the other generals who did not obey the edict did not come, they did not rebel immediately, but their attitudes were ambiguous, and they all stopped fighting and looked at Linen City. If Emperor Jinjian wins in the end, they have to think about it before deciding whether to rebel. If Emperor Jinjian loses, they must rebel. Emperor Jingyan received the news from various armies, and his body became even more rickety. He asked, "Qi Heiran hasn't come back yet?" You must know that although Qi Heiran is only a 4th-rank general now, he has an army of nearly 120,000 under him, which is much more powerful than General Guo and others. Now the ministers did not follow Emperor Jinjian to crusade, but explained for him with tired faces, "Your Majesty, Qi Shen will be entangled by Zixia, and he will not be able to escape at all, but he has sent a letter back and will separate it as soon as possible. Half of the troops should be brought back." The minister who escaped with the emperor paused and said, "Your Majesty, we must always save a chance for the people of Dezhou. If Qi Heiran retreats and returns, then 11 Xia will definitely massacre the people to vent his anger. Although several ministers have been corrupt and bribed, and have done various things of enclosure and exploitation, they really can't do it and still focus on self-interest at this time." The emperor was silent for a moment, and did not insist on Qi Heiran's return. "What news is there from the Yuan family?" The ministers lowered their heads. The family members of several generals were taken back to the palace by the second prince and put under strict guard, and the Yuan family was no exception. The emperor's complexion was obscure, but everyone could feel that he was in a bad mood. Back then he used these family members to control several generals, but now the second prince is just following his old path. When the emperor left the palace through the secret passage, the first thing he did was to send the Yuan family out of Linan City secretly. If they couldn't send them out, they would be executed immediately, and they must not fall into the hands of the rebels. But the imperial guard surrounding the Yuan family protected the Yuan family and couldn't even get out of the intersection. The second prince and Prime Minister Qin obviously knew the importance of the Yuan family to General Yuan, so they sent many people to intercept them, unlike the emperor. Yes, they ordered that the Yuan family must be kept alive. The living Yuan family is in their best interests, and they must not be killed, otherwise, what if the emperor planted the death of the Yuan family on them? The imperial guards escorting the Yuan family couldn't go out, so they had to go back to the Yuan mansion. They originally wanted to carry out the emperor's order, but the Yuan family was not a vegetarian. And there were rebels attacking outside. The Forbidden Army was attacked by the enemy, and the operation failed, and the Yuan family was also sent to the palace by the second prince's people and other generals' people after constant consumption. Including Qi Feng's family. That's right, after Mu Yangling and the others left, Qi Feng's family became hostages. The emperor didn't know what choice General Yuan would make, but he had to order Qin Wang, because he had only 50,000 imperial troops, and these people were like candlelight and fire piles compared to the rebels. It was nothing to mention. Now Emperor Jinjian is completely discouraged, and has handed over all matters to his subordinates, completely resigned to his fate, but he attaches great importance to the two young princes brought out of the palace, and almost puts all his protection power on them. Based on his understanding of General Yuan, after his death, General Yuan will definitely choose one of the princes to ascend the throne, maybe as a puppet, but this world still belongs to the Guo family, and there is hope for the prince to regain power when he grows up. Emperor Jinjian planned well, but the heavens obviously didn't love him enough. He thought it was a rebellion by the second prince and Prime Minister Qin, but in fact it was another form of Xixia invasion. While he was nestling in the camp waiting for Qi Ziyuan and the others to arrive, an army gradually appeared 20 miles away, an army of only 20,000 strong cavalry. The commander of the Forbidden Army came in with a pale face and reported, "Your Majesty, those are cavalry from Xixia." The second prince sent envoys to come out to greet him with Prime Minister Qin. The emperor sat down on the chair and said with a miserable smile, "Yes, not long after Qin Ziyangke came back from Xixia. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 542. Emperor Jinjian and his ministers were surrounded outside Linan City by front and back attacks. The emperor found the two princes and said, "I ask someone to send you out. Whoever survives will inherit the great rule." The two children were terrified, but not happy. The 7-year-old 8th prince couldn't help asking, "Father, can the world still be peaceful?" Emperor Jingyan remained silent, but asked someone to take the two princes down separately, and divided the armed forces secretly protecting him into two parts, letting them rush out when the imperial army broke through, and escort them out as much as possible. "Go to General Yuan and Qi Ziyuan." The emperor realized at this moment that he had no one he could trust completely. It would be great if Grand Tutor Yan was still alive. Emperor Jinjian wanted to break out of the siege, but the second prince didn't want to kill the king again in full view, so he sent envoys over, willing to honor Emperor Jinjian as the supreme emperor. Emperor Jinjian had been confused all his life, worried and indecisive all his life, but this time he was very resolute. He didn't agree to be the supreme emperor, but sent people to break out at night. The 50,000 imperial guards went out to kill under the order of the imperial guard commander, just to win a chance for the two princes. Emperor Jingyan and his ministers sat in the tent and listened to the shouts of killing outside all night. When daylight was approaching, the commander of the Dark Guard came in covered in blood and reported, "Your Majesty, the 8th and 10th princes have been sent away. Whether they can escape the pursuit depends on their abilities. Your Majesty, let the commander of the Imperial Army escort you away, there are veterans waiting to support you." Emperor Jingyan shook his head slightly, sighed and said, "I can't leave, thank you all the Qing family for being with me these few days. The second son's bastard should not embarrass you. When the time comes, you also put away your stubborn temper and let him go. My lord, I am getting old. If one of the two princes establishes the country in the future, I will still have to rely on the help of the ministers, so you have to take care of your health." In the evening, when the setting sun was like blood, the second prince's rebel army and the Xixia cavalry teamed up to take down the emperor's 50,000 imperial troops and rushed into the central tent. Emperor Jinjian was wearing a dragon robe and sat in the middle tent, looked up at the Xixia general, then turned to look at the second prince, and asked, "If you say you want the throne, just put it bluntly, I will give it to you, so what? Why do you want to do rebellion in this precarious time? Dazu is about to perish, and I don't want to be a subjugated king." The second prince said with a blank face, "Father said so, but he may not think so in his heart. The Jingzhou incident more than 20 years ago, everyone said that Dezhou was going to die, but didn't he die too? This time the situation has improved. Xixia has allied with our Great Zhou, and our Great Zhou will surely prosper for 100 years, so how can we talk about subjugation?" Emperor Jinjian was annoyed. "Xixia slaughtered my people, do you think the people will agree to negotiate peace? Qi Heiran is still leading the army to fight Xixia." The second prince showed a sarcastic smile on his face. "If father really thinks so, how can he spare Qin Xiang's life? Don't you also want to negotiate peace with Xixia? But the condition that my son gave Xixia is more generous." Emperor Jingyan choked, and was speechless immediately. He really planned to do so, but he hadn't had time to do it in the future. The courtiers kneeling under Emperor Jinjian looked at the emperor in disbelief. It turned out that this was the reason why the emperor kept Qin Xiang in the palace and did not kill him. Some of the upright courtiers felt ashamed. Emperor Jinjian looked at Qin Xiang and asked, "I have clearly promised you, why are you doing this?" Qin Xiang didn't speak. "For more than 20 years, I have thought that I have treated you well. Even if the people asked you to be executed before, I will protect you with all my strength." "Your Majesty," Qin Xiang interrupted him, "the matter has already happened, so it is useless to talk about it. If you still have any wish, just say it." Emperor Jingyan choked, looked down at the kneeling courtiers below, and said, "Don't hold them accountable." Qin Xiang showed a smile and said, "Naturally, several adults are the pillars of the country. As long as they are aware of current affairs, the new emperor will not embarrass them, but will rely on them." The second prince nodded beside him. Emperor Jinjian closed his eyes slightly, and the guards outside came in to take all the idlers away, and a servant came in to bathe and change clothes for Emperor Jinjian. Even if he was going to die, he could die with dignity, because he was the emperor. The second prince sat in another tent and felt restless. Qin Xiang immediately got up and said, "Your Majesty, let me send the late emperor off." The second prince rolled his eyes, wishing for what he wanted. After all, he was his father-in-law, and if he really wanted to kill him, he would have to bear a lot of psychological pressure. Qin Xiang brought a jug of poisoned wine to see the emperor. The emperor had finished grooming and was eating his last meal. Seeing this, the internal servants retreated one after another, and the soldiers outside were guarded layer by layer, because the second prince was waiting for the last moment, but he didn't realize that those people were all Xixia people, and his bodyguards had already been assigned to the other side. The emperor looked at Prime Minister Qin. Qin Xiang sat opposite him, looked at the emperor who was about the same age as him, but was more than 20 years older than him, sighed, and said, "Your Majesty, 20 years of your monarch and my ministers are considered appropriate, but it's a pity that you have been in the past 2 years. You shouldn't be suspicious of me." Emperor Jinjian was stunned, and then furious. "It turns out that everything was calculated by you. Yes, the situation has gotten out of control since I killed your minions. Their corpses are a vegetarian meal. What's wrong with me killing them? You actually took the entire Zhou dynasty. Come and fight me." Qin Xiang sneered, shook his head and said, "So you shouldn't be suspicious of me. Without me, you really can't do anything. It's me and Taifu Yan who have spoiled you all these years." Speaking of this, he lowered his face and said, "It's true that their corpses are vegetarian, and it's true that they should be executed for their crimes. If the emperor makes them subdue the law in an open and above-board way, at most, I will fight with you, and it will definitely not cause trouble in the future with so many things. Do you think that the thieves were instigated by the minister? Little do you know that it is the minister that they most want to kill, not your Majesty. Without Dezhou, not only the royal family of the Guo family will die, but my Qin family will also be wiped out. It's a pity that you can't see this, otherwise many things will not happen in the future. At this time, you are still doing well. In front of your emperor, I am still in front of my prime minister." Emperor Jinjian was not smart, but more than 20 years ago, he had two advantages. One was that he could listen to the opinions of his courtiers, and the other was that he was diligent in governing. It was precisely these 2 points that Taifu Yan chose him to be the emperor. Except that he didn't listen to the opinions of his courtiers on the matter of giving up Jingzhou mansion and fleeing south, Emperor Jinjian performed well in the 5 years after arriving in Linen City. Settle down. But the emperor gradually became lazy. When the number of concubines in the harem increased and the life in the south of the Yangtze River gradually recovered, the emperor became more and more fond of pleasure, and naturally became more and more stupid. But at this time, Prime Minister Qin has gradually stepped onto the political stage and can help the emperor handle government affairs.